Microsoft Copilot for Security and Purview. I am Patrick David. I'm part of our customer experience team, working closely with the product team on Copilot for Security and Purview. I've had the pleasure to work in this space for the past year and a bit. So happy today to share with you about Copilot for Security and Purview. So as we get started here, just want to set the tone of what we've got here for kind of the agenda. Again, please use the Q&A to ask any questions you might have. This will be a mix of both slides and some demos to kind of walk through the experiences that we have. So we'll start first about what is Copilot for Security and Purview, who's it for. We'll talk about the different experiences that we have available, both standalone and embedded. We'll talk about some scenario examples, provide some resources, and leave time at the end for any questions that don't get answered, or if you have them, we'll try and address those live in the chat also. So with that, so Copilot for Security and Purview is built on top of Microsoft Copilot for Security. So for those that aren't familiar with Copilot for Security, it is a generative AI assistant that works in the Microsoft solutions across multiple solutions within side of Microsoft, and can be extended to third parties and open AI connections to that. So we're going to focus today on how it is used within the Purview space within Microsoft, but there's other solutions that we have within Defender, Entra, Intune, and others that also work on top of Copilot for Security. So as we think about this solution, it really is geared to helping folks get more using machine learning speeds, right? Making folks more efficient to prioritize and automate responses, getting faster understanding of unique cybersecurity threats, and giving you the ability to process large volumes of data more efficiently. So how do we do this with Copilot for Security? We allow you to prioritize security risk and understand kind of the intent or context behind an alert that's generated. We also make it easier for folks to identify risky activity or do searches in more of a natural language, as you'll see. And Copilot for Security can work across kind of those different areas in the solution, as you'll see, to really help investigators or SOC analysts identify risky activity that might be occurring in the organization across multiple solutions. So not only within Purview, but also extending that into Defender, Intune, Entra, as mentioned before. So when we look at this in the context of Purview skills, we've got multiple personas that we look at here. So we've got kind of our SOC personas, right? And so these are folks that maybe work in complex fragmented tool environments, right? Maybe they've got lots of different tools that they work within. And how can Copilot for Security kind of be that central place they can go to identify incidents across multiple solutions and do the investigation that they need? So I'll show an example of that later too. We also have data security admins, right? So these are folks that are maybe working within Purview, looking at alerts. Maybe these are data loss prevention alerts. Maybe these are insider risk alerts. And we know that organizations get a large volume of alerts per day, right? And so most data security admins aren't able to process all those. So how can Copilot for Security help you quickly identify the risky components of those alerts and then take remediation actions where needed on those alerts? And then on the compliance admin side, so these could be folks that are needing to review alerts for regulatory compliance, for example, or maybe they're doing investigations as part of an e-discovery search, right? How do we make it easier for these folks to review the large amounts of data sets that they've got, and also help with kind of that barrier to entry of not having to understand a keyword query language and being able to ask something in kind of a natural language that you would do a search investigation for. So we've got two different experiences within Copilot for Security in Purview. The first one is going to be a standalone experience here. And so the standalone experience really is geared kind of to help you do that kind of investigation across multiple solutions, break down kind of those silos or barriers that we have across solutions in a single area, a single pane of glass, as you can say. So this, in the Purview space, we have the ability to look at both not only insider risk potential and data risk potential. So as you're doing hunting or investigation in here, those are the two areas that we focus on, and giving you the ability to kind of prioritize and understand the data sensitivity needs of your organization based on investigation that you're doing. So I'm going to real quickly demo kind of what that looks like in the standalone experience before we move over to kind of the embedded experience here. So this is the standalone experience. For those that haven't seen it, this is securitycopilot.microsoft.com. When you go here, this is kind of your landing page. A few things that I'll point out within this. We do have sources, and one of these sources being the Microsoft Purview plugin. So this needs to be enabled in order for your users to look at the Microsoft Purview skills that are available, right? And so skills are the ability to kind of ask questions. But as you can see here, we've got several different plugins available: Entra, Intune, Sentinel, just to see a few here. But today we're going to be focusing on this Microsoft Purview one. So once that's enabled for your user or for your organization, you can then go and ask questions. Now, for the sake of time, I've already gone through and asked a couple of questions here of what Copilot would respond with. So you might start with something like, tell me the top DLP alerts for today, right? And so Copilot's going to go pull your DLP alerts based on what you have access to see. So again, I'm coming in here. Copilot for Security works on behalf of the user. So we're not going to get any additional information that we wouldn't already have the ability to go see. If we logged into Purview, for example, and went to our DLP alerts, I could see these DLP alerts also, but I'm able to do this within a central location here and do some additional hunting. So I can start with, hey, what are my DLP alerts? In this case, I've only got 2 alerts here. I can see quickly the severity. I could ask additional follow-up questions to this. So I might say, hey, tell me more about the second alert, right? So I'm now diving from just having a list of all my DLP alerts into one of those alerts in particular. In this case, I'm picking on the second one. I can see this was an email, what the current status is of that DLP alert, why it was flagged, in this case for US financial data. Additionally, if you've opted into sharing insider risk management data with DLP, we can also see that this user is a high risk from insider risk management. So that's interesting, right? That's something I might want to investigate further if I were to take this further. But I can take it kind of 2 directions within Copilot. So in the first one, I'm going to say, hey, tell me more about the particular files that were associated in here. So we could say this was an exchange. There were some files associated. I can get information about the file associated with that. And here I can see that that file, credit card expense document, was attached here, had 97 instances of credit card numbers with a confidence level of 85, right? So that's pretty concerning. I can see this file had labels applied to it twice in the last little bit. And I can see that this, again, is the user associated with that. So now I might pivot because on that first one, I understood, hey, that user was risky, right? So I might go and ask insider risk management, right? Tell me more about the user risk associated with this particular alert. So I can go over and query insider risk management and get some information. Here I can see that user had some exfiltration activities happening on September 1st. I can see that the user mounted a USB on August 27th. They did some collection of data on the 30th. They did some obfuscation, which is they deleted some files. This could also be maybe they've renamed some files. So you kind of get a history now, not only of the DLP alerts, the data associated with that, but now also the user associated with that. Now I might go that even further, right? So I haven't left Copilot for Security. I might ask, hey, tell me more about, because this happened on endpoint, tell me more about the device associated with that. And so here I can see the user has 2 devices. With Intune, here are the devices. I can click on them to get more information. And then maybe I want to see, hey, has there been any risky sign-ins? So here I'm going to use actually going out to Entra to pull out risky sign-in information. And so here I can see the sign-in information for this particular user. I can see they've signed in from Israel, Germany, and there's some risky sign-ins that were negated by using MFA. So maybe this person was traveling. And to sum all this up, right, now I've done all these investigations, I've asked all these queries, I can let Copilot say, hey, summarize all this up into an email, include some information about the user's location, job title, manager's email, for example. And here I can summarize all this up in the format of an email, so that I could just literally copy and paste this with some recommendations, maybe tweak it slightly, but now I can send that out. So this, using the power of Copilot for Security, allowed me to interact with multiple different solutions, right, to do an investigation. So what we've seen customers do here is take this kind of example and bucket it up into what's known as a prompt book. So you can actually save these prompts. I'm not going to do all that here today, but you can actually, if you get these set up the way you want, build this into a prompt book that you can save and rerun this process every time. So maybe as part of your investigation process, you have like a playbook type scenario where you every time run a certain sequence of activities. You could do that with Copilot for Security. So that's something that's resonated really well with customers. Let me jump back over to the slides here. And talk about the other experience we have. So that's standalone Security Copilot at Microsoft.com. Go in there, kind of have that open prompt experience where you can ask questions. We also know that customers like to work within the solutions they're already working with today. So we have embedded scenarios built into Microsoft Purview, and these are within our DLP, data loss prevention solution, insider risk management solution, communication compliance, and e-discovery solutions today. And so these also can help an investigator work within the solutions that they might be familiar with today. So if I'm working within, for example, data loss prevention, I'm looking at alerts, Copilot can work side by side with me right there. So this has been really nice and beneficial for our users and customers to get context using Copilot without having to jump to multiple screens, maybe within the solution to do that. So really cutting down from hours or days to a few minutes, right, using Copilot for Security to kind of summarize some of this information. So I'm going to walk through the different solutions here, and then I'll do a quick demo at the end there. So first one we're going to start with is our data loss prevention solution, or DLP, right? So within DLP, as we're investigating alerts that come in, having the ability to have Copilot kind of give us a high-level summary. So what you saw there in kind of that standalone experience, we can bring information from the multiple screens that we have within DLP to one quick screen with Copilot as a single location, so that as an investigator, I don't have to jump around to multiple screens to get a high-level understanding of what the DLP alert's about and whether or not that's potentially risky. As you also saw there, we have the ability to pull in information from not only DLP, but insider risk, right? So if your organization has opted in to share and you're using insider risk management, if the user is particularly risky, we're able to see that within Copilot, within DLP, and highlight kind of that additional information. So that might lead an investigator to take a different step or set of actions with that. The next one I'm going to talk about here is our insider risk management solution. So within here, we can get a comprehensive understanding of what in a particular alert was, right? So a user might have multiple alerts that we're trying to investigate. And Copilot for Security can look across those different alerts that we have access to and give us a high-level summary of what is why this user was detected as risky. Now, obviously, we can go into the Insider Risk Management solution, dive in further to get additional details about these high-risk activities. But here we can just get a quick summary of what the user did. What are those key following risk factors that caused an insider risk management alert to generate, or why it generated as a high, medium, or low. Not only that, we can bring in stuff like data resignation if that's being ingested into insider risk management. And then we also have the ability to look at follow-up questions to this. So this is something that is currently rolling out right now, but we can also do additional follow-up questions on a particular insider risk management alert. So here, not only can we get the initial insights, but we can dive in deeper to, did this contain a sequence activity? List all the data exfiltration activities for this particular user, summarized in the last 30 days. So this is something that, again, customers have asked us for, something that we're rolling out right now. And it gives you the ability to kind of hunt deeper further on a particular alert within insider risk management as you're doing that initial investigation to determine whether or not you need to take some action against a user. Bigger screenshot of that. The next one I'm going to cover is communication compliance. So within communication compliance, this solution is geared for supervising communications based on organizational needs. One thing that we have is the ability to look at regulatory compliance violations, right? So things like stock manipulation, unauthorized disclosure, as you can see here. And as a reviewer or investigator in this particular solutions, sometimes we have large messages that are captured, right? So this isn't just like the short Teams messages that's a few words, right? But maybe we're investigating email, a long email thread, or we're investigating an email that has an attachment to that, or even like a Teams meeting transcript recording, right? That might be an hour-long session. As a reviewer, you don't want to have to go through all that information to identify, hey, what was the violation? Where did it occur? How is it relevant to the particular violation here in the case of stock manipulation, unauthorized disclosure? How can I use Copilot to kind of give me a quick summary of that to determine, okay, here's what was said, here's why it was flagged, and then take the right remediation actions on that based on my organizational needs. So this is another great feature that we have within communication compliance that you can use with Copilot for Security to help speed up that investigation aspect of this. The last solution that I'm going to talk about today is eDiscovery. In eDiscovery, we actually have two different solutions available. eDiscovery here is the solution that allows organizations to do data investigation, right? Going out, searching, pulling data based on search queries that you create. These search queries today, the language that is known by eDiscovery is keyword query language, right? So if you are familiar with keyword query language, then maybe it's easy for you to go in there and create queries, or you can use the condition builder and walk through the steps to create that. What we've heard from customers is, hey, I would be really great if I could use kind of a natural language, right? I know I need A, B, C, D. Can you help me create kind of that keyword query language to go execute these searches for me? And so with Copilot for Security, we're actually able to say, yes, provide us that natural language. And then we will go and generate the KQL QL language for this so that you can do those e-discovery steps, right? So now, as an investigator, I don't have to be an expert in keyword query language or walk through multiple condition builders. I can use the natural language that a request might come in as and generate that KQL language that I need to actually go and run and start that e-discovery search. So breaking down that time that's required in order for you to go and do that investigation, or breaking down that skill set barrier to understand the required language to do the searching has been really powerful for customers. The last one I'm going to talk about here, and then I'll go show some examples of this, is our another e-discovery solution that we have around contextual evidence summaries, right? So I just talked about how we can create e-discovery searches using natural language. Once we have that search, right, that can be large amounts of data that an investigator has to go through to see whether or not it's relevant to a case. Now, these might be large documents, these might be large Teams conversations, these could be emails, right? And having to read through or sift through all that to understand what the context is or what the summary is of those particular documents is even relevant to the particular case that I'm working on can be very time consuming. So what we can do with Copilot for Security is part of that review experience is using Copilot for Security to kind of summarize the files associated with a particular review set. So here you can see we've got a Word document that's an acquisition memorandum, and we're able to get a quick summary of that document, and we can even say within the context of stock manipulation in this case, because that's what's relevant for this particular case that I'm working on. Can you summarize this document and understand why this might be relevant to a stock manipulation case? You can also do some additional follow-up questions in there. So who are the key participants? What are the key topics of this? So breaking down that barrier of time in order to do an investigation is really where this is powerful for Copilot for Security to help users investigate that. So I'm going to demo off some of these different experiences that you see here. So I'm first going to start off in DLP. So in DLP, right, I'm in the new Purview portal. If you haven't seen this, this is a new Purview portal landing. I'm in the data loss prevention solution. I'm in my alerts, and I'm going to pick a particular alert here. So I've got only 4. I'm sure most organizations wish they only had 4, but I'm able to pick a particular alert here, and then I can say summarize with Copilot. Now, as I'm going through this, right, I've got some information here on the main page. I've chose to share information from insider risk. So I also have user activity summary. But what you might do as an investigator, run. So while this is running, I've got information. Here's the PowerPoint. If I had access to view the file, right, as part of my rights in Purview, I could do that. I can see this user is marked as high risk. So I've got some information here associated with that. Now, as an investigator, normally, like I've got some information here. I might have some information on the alerts tab, events tab, user activity summary. I can go to view additional details. So I'm having to jump around to a lot of different screens in order to get some of this key information that's available right here with Copilot for Security as a summary. So I still might go hunt and get some additional information, but here I can quickly get that understanding, and maybe even just a link. Like maybe it's enough for me to just go see that sales projection PowerPoint, and if I've got the rights to do that within Purview, I can do that here. But I'm not having to jump to multiple screens to get all this relevant information as part of my investigation. I can quickly get started with, okay, here's a quick summary of this. Maybe that's enough that I can say, hey, just close this alert, or maybe I need to notify the user so I can make that decision pretty quickly here. So the next solution I'm going to demo and talk about here is our insider risk management solution. So within insider risk management here, again, assuming you have the rights in order to access insider risk management, we have the ability to go into alerts. So there's two locations here that we've got Copilot for Security. I'll show both of them and talk a little bit about the difference between the two. So within alerts here, we can see, and this does work with pseudo-anonymization, which can be turned on here. We can generate a summary. In this case, this user has 3 different alerts within insider risk management because it hit on 3 different policies. And we can go into those alerts, we can get high-level details, or we can let Copilot say, hey, summarize what the key risky activity is for this particular user or any user in here. And that way I can make some determination on, okay, yes, I can see this user had some cumulative exfiltration activities. I can see they had some exfiltration activities on September 3rd. I can see they deleted some SharePoint files. So maybe this is something I want to investigate further, or maybe I want to dive in deeper, right? So I can use that kind of follow-up experience here to dive in deeper for this particular alert to get additional information and details about the user in question. So I haven't had to jump into that alert, right, and do any hunting yet within that alert. I can do that quickly with Copilot here. I can do additional follow-ups if I need to. If I needed to, and this also works for data loss prevention, if I needed to kind of take this from the embedded experience and take it back to that standalone experience, I can do that with this more options. So I can say, hey, open this in Copilot for security. It'll take me out to that standalone experience, knowing that I've already got this session information, and then I could do additional follow-ups here. So another way that you can do kind of that hunting across solutions is I can start in the embedded scenario and move to the standalone experience and ask additional follow-up questions. So maybe I want to ask something about this user from Entra, or maybe I want to ask additional information about what their devices are from Intune, or I want to understand that they have any Defender alerts. You can do that by going from the embedded to the standalone experience and doing additional follow-up questions here. So I've looked at the context from an alert standpoint. Also, if you click on an alert, you'll see that there's a summarize button here. So if you're within an alert already and you want to just kind of summarize this particular alert, we have the summarize button here where I can get a quick summary of Copilot for security in regards to this particular alert and some of that key relevant information. The other area that we have Copilot for security within Insider Risk Management is on the users tab. So on the users tab, these are users that are currently under in scope, right, for a particular policy. And so you can see some of the users here that have already generated alerts. We can also see several other users here that haven't generated alerts, right? They haven't had enough risky activity here. But I can jump into here and use Copilot for security to kind of summarize based on the user what their user risk might be within regards to insider risk management. And so here I can see some of the key risky activity that this user might have, regardless of what alerts they might have associated with them. I can also get some key information, right, if it's available, about the user details. So who the user is, their title, user principal name, if had risky activity in the past, right? If they had other alerts, if they have any open cases. So here we're kind of building on that context of the user and generating some of that risky activity for them. So I could dive in further to this particular user if I needed to, and then I can have additional follow-up questions with this also. I'm going to pause there and see if there's any questions that haven't been answered that we want to try and address now, Jason.
Yeah, we do have a few. The first one is keyword query language different to Kusto query language used in Sentinel queries?
It is, yes. So keyword query language is used within eDiscovery. It is a different language than Kusto query language. Both are sometimes referred to as KQL, but they are slightly different in the language formats.
Great, thank you. The next one is, do you need to activate Purview for Enterprise to be able to enable Copilot?
So you would need to have Purview enabled the different solutions that I'm showing. So if, for example, if I wanted to use data loss prevention, you would need to have data loss prevention alerts flowing in here to use and see those alerts experiences with Copilot. Like the information protection, right, hunting on data and things like that, those ones you would just need to have sensitivity labels and things set up there in order to hunt in that in the standalone experience. It's not an embedded experience. But to use the different solutions that we're highlighting, yes, you would need to either have alerts being generated or be set up in some form or fashion.
Great, thank you. The next one is, if I want to compare costing for getting data from DLP via Copilot as a question, as opposed to getting same data using Logic App queries, which is the most cost effective?
That depends. It's probably not something we can address over a call because there's a lot of factors that go into that.
Okay.
I can say right now.
Yeah. The next one is there currently a way to use Copilot for security with MTO or a way for MSSP to use the tool on multiple customers or tenants at the same time?
I'll have to follow up on that one. Copilot for security can be used. I know we've got MSPs using Copilot for security. I'm not the MSP expert in that space on how we would use it directly with this solution, but we can follow up on that one if we have a name or we'll reach out.
Cool. Yeah, I would just like to say, if you do want to get follow-up, go to Azure, aka.ms/Azure Purview community to ask those questions, and they'll be answered in that forum. The next question is, are there any separate roles required for the summaries, or does it work off the user's roles?
Yeah, so everything that I'm showing runs off of the user. So everything you do in Copilot for security runs off the user's context. So whether I'm in the standalone or embedded scenarios, I have to have the rights, one, to Copilot for security, right? So you got your license for Copilot for security, you have roles to Copilot for security, and then let's say right now I'm in insider risk management, I would need rights, at least the investigator or analyst rights, in order to access insider risk management. Copilot for security is not going to give you any additional information or details that you wouldn't have the ability to go in today if you were to go to those particular solutions themselves. So it acts on behalf of the user.
Great. I just wanted to ask, Patrick, do you have more to present? We do have a few more questions, but I just want to make sure we have time to get through all the content.
Yeah, I do have a little bit more. I just thought it'd be good to pause there and take some of the questions. I saw a lot of questions coming in. I see a lot of them getting answered, so I want to make sure we get those. So
awesome.
We want to pause if we think we've got through a good chunk of them. I can demo eDiscovery, and then we can take some more questions.
Okay, that sounds good.
So that was insider risk, data loss prevention. The last one I'm going to show off here is going to be eDiscovery. So in eDiscovery, as mentioned, we've got two different areas that we're using Copilot for security in here. The first one is you've got a case created, you're doing an investigation. How do I get started with that investigation? So today you can do like the content builder, you can do the query language, keyword query language, right? If you know the syntax and all that. Now, I'm not an eDiscovery expert. I'm not a keyword query expert, but I do know how to ask kind of in a natural language what I'm looking for. And so what we can do is we can take something like this. I need to find all the emails, Teams conversations from Patrick at Contoso to Liz at Contoso. In this case, I'm doing a stock manipulation investigation. So I'm looking for the word stock, make easy money, and near the words get rich, for example. So I can say, hey, Copilot, help me understand what that might look like in a keyword query language here, right? So I'm not an expert in this space. Again, I can go research, I can find out how to do the joins and the nears and all that information for Teams and email context, but Copilot for security can also be used to go generate that. And so here I've taken a pretty simple ask. Copilot for security has created that keyword query language for me. Then I can just go and say, hey, copy this keyword query, paste down here, and go run the query to go identify all my information. So that's a pretty simple request. Here is another example where I've actually just taken an email, right, from our legal team or from someone wanting to do an investigation. I haven't really formatted this in any way, form, or fashion. The key information is going to be here just for sakes of showing this, but I can let Copilot reason over kind of that whole email and identify what that key information is. So the first thing you can also do is say refine this, right? I've got a large amount of data here. I'm not exactly sure on maybe where those requirements are. Copilot for Security, can you help me understand like what the ask is here, or what you're going to go and generate that keyword query language for? And so I can refine this. What this is going to do is going to come back and say, I read over all that information. Here are my 3 things that I took out of that. And you could even take this and that back. Hey, just want to make sure these are the asks that you want out of this particular request, right, as part of this process you might have, or you maybe need to tweak this. Or you can accept this and say, okay, great. Yes, this is exactly what I wanted. Can you generate the keyword query language for me? So again, Copilot for Security is going to go out, generate that keyword query language here, and then I could be off to the races, kind of running that query, doing that search investigation, and getting my data back. So there's the query back. So once that's done, right, then we get a large amount of data, right? So now I'm within cases, I've done my search, I've created a review set within eDiscovery. And so I've got all this data here. I've got 27,666 items to review. Right? I'm a reviewer going through here. I've got a Teams conversation in this case, which has some attachments, right? And I want to understand what's this team conversation about, or hey, what's this particular attachment? Is it relevant to my particular case that I'm looking at here? I can use Copilot for Security to kind of summarize this for me. So, and imagine this is a document that you're having to read or review through. Can I get a quick summary, Copilot, of just what this is about, right? This might be someone's personal information that isn't relevant, or this might be something that's not relevant to a particular case in this regard. So I can quickly dismiss this if needed. So here I can let Copilot kind of summarize that data for me. Again, taking a little bit of time here as it's going through this document, but it's going to come back and give me a summary of this particular memorandum in this case. And I can see, is it relevant to my particular investigation? And here we can see this is a confidential memorandum from John Doe, Chief Executive Officer at Contoso, talking about some acquisitions information. So that seems pretty relevant. I can see this was actually done in the context of a Teams message. This Teams message is a conversation between 2 folks, and it's in Korean. I don't speak Korean, but I can let Copilot summarize up this Teams conversation for me in Korean, and this works with several languages that Copilot for Security supports. And because I'm in Purview and my native language is in English, Copilot for Security is going to come back and summarize this conversation in my native language, which is English. So without me having to go and doing a translation or putting this in a translator, I can let Copilot for Security kind of reason over this data conversation, again, quite a large conversation, and provide me some context about what this conversation was about, right? And then maybe I take further investigation on this. Maybe I do translate each individual message, but this kind of gives me a quick understanding of what this message was about. So those were some of the things I wanted to highlight in the embedded scenario experience. I'm going to jump back to the slides here and just kind of summarize, wrap things up here as we're getting close to the top of the hour. So what do we have today? So on the data security side, we've got prompts that you can ask kind of in the standalone experience, sometimes referred to as immersive experience, where we're looking at like data loss prevention, user risk, risky activity around a particular set of data that's associated with something. And so we can do that. Now, this is not an exhaustive list of prompts. These are prompts that are here to kind of give you ideas of the types of things that you might ask within Copilot for Security. We also have summary in data loss prevention, summary in insider risk management. Compliance, which I didn't do a live demo of, we have the ability to review contextual summary in regards to a particular match. In the case of like stock manipulation, for example, I can summarize a Teams conversation with that, or I can summarize a large email to understand what that email is about in the context of a regulatory or business conduct violation, for example. And then in eDiscovery, we have the ability, which I just showed there, to do the contextual summary of the evidence gathered and the natural language to keyword query language in eDiscovery, where I can take kind of that request to generate that search query in order for me to go pull data. So again, summarizing up data security context within the SOC investigation, we definitely have the ability to have kind of that single pane of glass where you can go in and identify and pull data from multiple locations as part of your investigation, and then kind of bring all that in and summarize that up. So this is one scenario that we've heard is resonating. The other thing with that, as I mentioned, you can then take, like, if you've got that playbook that you like, take those repeatable steps, create that into a prompt book that you can rerun with variables whenever you need to, right? So as part of investigation, I like the way I do this. Every time I do an investigation, I need to gather this set of information. I can do that with Copilot for security to kind of automate that process. It's just a screenshot of kind of what that might look like. Tell me more about the user involved in alert, right? So maybe you start with DLP, tell me more about a user. We can get some additional information about that user in regards to that message. Another one, as I showed, is the eDiscovery search with natural language, right? So really simplifying that investigation process without maybe having to be a keyword query expert, right? Or speeding up that time for investigation. Like, hey, I know what I want, I just don't know how to put that into the machine language that I need to in order to go generate that search query, right? So using Copilot for security to help summarize that up, making it easier for folks to do that investigation, saving time, is another really good scenario that we've seen customers utilize and use. And again, just kind of what that looks like there. So we've got the Copilot for security experience on the left, where you can kind of put the natural language in there. And then on the right, generate that keyword query language for us to do that investigation. So we've got a bunch of resources here that we can use. We'll place these resources also in the chat. But there's a lot of good stuff out there, including Learn documentation, Ninja training, not only for Purview, but for all the Copilot for securities. And then the last one I want to call out there on this slide also is some work we've been doing about kind of extend as a Copilot for security. So as mentioned, we've got kind of that standalone plugins, skills, and capabilities, also with the embedded. But you can also extend this and bring your own plugins that you might need, right? These could be keyword or Custo query language, right? So if you're using SIEM, or you've got some type of investigation that you want to in and enrich kind of that data with the standalone experience, you can do that. And we've provided some guidance and some customizations there for Copilot for security with our data security plugin. So you could take a look at that in those capabilities there. So with that, I'll got some time for some questions that maybe didn't get answers in chat, or if there's certain questions that were kind of theming, happy to address those, Jason.
Great, thanks so much. Yeah, the team's been great with answering questions. We do have a few unanswered, so we'll try and get through as many as we can. The first is, can I limit who can use the Copilot for security due to the cost once I enable the plugins?
Yeah, so I didn't talk about it here, but yes, Copilot for security has its own permission rights. So there's admins and contributors, so you can control who has access to run Copilot for security, and so you can control it that way, right? So if you only want certain teams to have Copilot for security rights, you can do that. And if they don't have rights to Copilot for security, then they're not going to be able to use the embedded or standalone experiences. So it's a two-part permission: one to Copilot for security, they need at least be a contributor there, and then rights to run whatever solution it might be within Purview.
Great, thank you. The next question is, can Copilot for Security summarize auto labeling policy outcomes before turning on the policy?
Copilot for Security auto summarize auto labeling. No, we don't have that skill today.
Okay, thank you. The next one is, in e-discovery, does the audit capture the use of Copilot by the user in addition to the action or events?
Today, no, that is something we're working on.
Great. The next one is, does the Copilot give only summaries on the alerts received, or is there any automation remediation techniques available to resolve those alerts?
Today, it's just on the alerts that are received. Would love to, again, use the forums, but love to hear that feedback on ways that you would like to see kind of the automation piece done. We have seen customers do some automation with like Azure Function apps, Logic apps, and things like that with Copilot for Security, kind of pairing those together. But yeah, love to hear more of those scenarios in the forum.
Great, thank you. The next question is, are all queries automatically stored somewhere so they can be audited to ensure they were legitimate and it's not being misused?
Yeah, so things are being tracked. We're working on making that more available to customers to kind of audit that activity.
Great. The next one is, what is the expected overall impact if only Defender at AV is active and a third-party XDR is used?
So like what I showed today in the embedded scenarios is only going to work if you're using like the scenarios that we have, right? So for example, like DLP, if you're not getting DLP alerts, you're not going to see anything. So it would just depend. We do have extensibility to non-Microsoft third-party solutions with Copilot for Security. So I don't know which solution you have, but that's another option you can look at. And then with Copilot for Security, you can also build kind of the extensibility model there, where you can kind of bring your own plugins and own skills in if needed. So it really just depends on where your data lives. For example, if it's all feeding into a SIEM, like Sentinel, for example, then maybe you could query that.
Great, thank you. The next question is it possible to inject third-party sensor data into the security framework that this third-party events are evaluated by Copilot?
Yeah, so I think the same as the previous response, right? So that you can extend the capabilities of Copilot for Security, it would just depend on that use case.
Great. Next one is, in terms of high-risk users, will these be associated with Entra ID security high-risk users?
So we can. So Entra, you can ask Entra, right, if a user was risky from an Entra standpoint, or in the context of Purview, like I did today, from inside a risk management standpoint. So if you've got rights to both of those to ask, you can definitely ask those. If you're going to ask it within one prompt, sometimes, and there's questions on like prompt understanding and things like that, so I'm not going to go kind of into all that detail, but you can kind of tell Copilot which area you're wanting to look for risky behavior, right? So if you know you want to pull from Entra, for example, you can say, based on Entra risk profile, go tell me if this user is risky from there. If you're within Purview and you want to know, hey, from inside of risk management, you can say, based on Purview, tell me if the user is risky. So there's some capabilities you can kind of force Copilot to do the different responses from different areas if you know that. Otherwise, Copilot will try and reason over which is the best response based on what you've asked it.
Great, thank you. The next question is, can a SOC team benefit from Copilot for Security within Lighthouse Management, Azure, and/or M365 Lighthouse?
I'll have to follow up on, I'm not a Lighthouse expert, so I don't know.
Cool, no worries. The next one is, how are security compute units calculated? Is it based on active use or a flat fee per hour/month?
Yeah, so we didn't go into pricing here. There's guides on pricing for Copilot for Security. Basically, you pay for security compute units, or SCUs, and it is a flat fee per hour. And if you use them within that hour, then you can it's a consumption-based model, essentially.
Okay, thank you. The next one is, do you need to activate Purview for Enterprise to be able to enable Copilot for Purview?
So I think we talked about that one a little bit earlier, but yeah, so you need to have the additional, whatever capabilities you're going to use. For example, let's pick on data loss prevention. You would need to have that enabled in your organization to ask skills of that, right? Or see the embedded scenarios. So depending on what you're using or what you're wanting to do, those would need to be enabled for your organization.
Great. And then the last question we have, it's a little wordy, so let me know if you need me to repeat it, is since this will use SCUs, we can spin them up and down in the tenant to help deal with how much work we have to do and when we need to do it. But is there any value in having it run all the time, or can we just spin it up when we need and get the same quality of information?
So yes, you can spin up and down. I'll say there's a slight delay when you spin up and down on that. So having those SCUs available kind of all the time when you them is kind of the preferred method of what we've seen with customers. Also, if you're going to do like any automation, we've had customers that have like logic apps, for example, that run at particular times to pull information and work with Copilot for security. Those are things like obviously you'd have to have security compute units available to you. Those are like some of the benefits of having them all on all the time. And that's kind of the preferred method that we would recommend, but fully understand customers wanting to turn them on, off when they need. There's just delays in doing that. And for large organizations, that can be quite time consuming to turn them on or off based on the rights that you might have. So just they consider that as you're thinking about this. So.
Great. Thanks so much, Patrick, for being our guest today and for sharing the great information with our community. Also, thank you to the Q&A team who helped us with answering the questions and providing the resourceful information. To all the listeners still on the line, if you're someone who wishes to aid in the protection of the world from cyber threats and desire to have a say in shaping our strategies, blueprints, and recommendations, then we invite you to become part of our security community. Together, we can make a global impact. So join us at aka.ms/securitycommunity. This is also where you'll be notified about the upcoming webinars, events, and other announcements. Also, please take a minute submitting your webinar feedback at aka.ms/security-webinar-feedback. For those of you who may have additional questions on the topic we just covered or other product-related questions, please feel free to raise them on our Microsoft Tech Community discussion space at aka.ms/Azure Purview Community. Thank you all for being part of our community and for joining us on these webinars. We hope to see you next time. Goodbye.